Hi, it's Matt Bisogno here again, and in part one of this series we looked at general research principles and gave some thought to devising angles and approaches that suit your particular style of betting. If you've not read it yet, I strongly advise you to do that first. There's a link, hopefully, above this video. Okay, assuming you're already on board with the general principles, today I'd like to introduce you to Query Tool. That's Geegeez Gold's interrogation engine. In this second part, we'll look at what it is and where to find it, how it works, and most importantly perhaps, QT angles, the real power within Query Tool. So let's get right to it. So what is Query Tool? Well, quite simply, it's a way of asking questions, getting answers, and being reminded of those answers when you're looking at a race. Let's look where it lives. Under the Tools menu, you'll see a number of options, and the second one down is Query Tool. Let's select that. So this is the general Query Tool interface. On the left hand side, we have a bunch of parameters which are in accordion format. That means when you click on any of these, they'll open up to reveal more data elements. Let's start with the date. The date range can be a specific range of your choice. It defaults to the last 5 years, or you can use presets for the last 1 year, the last 2 years, the last 5, or since 2009. You can also elect to choose individual days, months, or years. Let's select 2 years. In the race parameter accordion, we have a number of variables that relate to a race. The country of the race, the course, the race code, the class, major race class if it's a class 1 race or a pattern race, the race distance, and here we can select a range. The going, again we can choose a range. This is good to soft. The number of runners, you can choose a range. Handicap or non-handicap. The odds of the favourite, the odds of the second favourite, and the odds of the third favourite. Under runner, we have a bunch more. Horse, search for an individual name. Geegeez for instance. Sire, the same, search for a sire. Galileo. Dam sire likewise. Galileo. Trainer, search for a trainer. Honeyball as an example. Jockey likewise. Probert. David Probert. Jockey's claim. Horse's age, gender, odds rank. In other words, first is the favourite, second is the second favourite. If you wanted to look only at the first 3 in the betting, you'd say odds rank 1 to 3. Headgear, this is another box where you type in what you're after. So in this example, hood, and there is hood, and there are also various combinations of hood with other headgear. Card weight. Now this is the weight that the horse is allocated, let's say 9 stone. Actual weight is the weight taking into account any overweight or jockey claim. So if it's a 7-pound claimer on a horse with an advertised weight of 9 stone, the actual weight would be 9 stone less 7 pounds, which is 8 stone 7. Hope that makes sense. Again, card draw. This is the draw number as in your newspaper, if you still use a newspaper, or as advertised on a race card. The actual draw is that draw less any non-runners inside the horse. So for instance, if a horse was drawn 10 in a race where there were 2 non-runners drawn 8 and 5 inside him, the horse's card draw would be 10, but his actual draw would be 8. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Official rating needs no explanation. Pace score. Now this is Geegeez unique, probably not unique actually, but Geegeez scoring system, whereby a horse with a score of 4 led in its race, a score of 3 was prominent, a score of 2 was midfield, and a score of 1 was held up. And you can do queries based on a horse's run style, or a group of horses' run style with the same run style. Speed rating. This refers to Peter May's speed ratings. Speed rating rank refers to whether it's the highest rated horse, second highest, and so on. And again, you can choose a range there. And wind count. Now this is for wind operations. So if you wanted only horses that had not had a wind operation, you do 0 to 0. If you wanted horses on their first start after a wind op, the W1 notation on the cards, you do 1 to 1. If you wanted to look at horses who had a wind op, who were running in one of their first 3 starts after a wind operation, do 1 to 3, and so on. If you wanted to look at all of them, you might put in 1 to 100, and that would show all horses' performance, certainly in the UK, after an advertised wind surgery. So those are the variables. Now, underneath these, there's a 4th accordion called hidden, and in here, I've got nothing in here at the moment, but if I this is a place, if you want to kind of declutter your list of parameters. As an example, when I'm doing this, I very, very rarely, in fact, I never use the SP of the third favourite. So these little minus buttons on the right hand side of a variable, if you click that, you can see it's disappeared here, and guess where it's gone? Yep, there it is. And then there's a plus there, and if you click that, guess where it's gone? You need to actually refresh the page to get that back, which is a minor irritation, but he's there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get rid of this one, and this one, because I don't use them, and then that's just a bit tidier. Under runner, I'm personally going to get rid of jockey claim, actual weight, because I only use card weight, and I think I'll leave the rest of those in there. And as I say, they're all in here, so if I want to reinstate them, I just click the plus button, and then refresh the page, importantly, and they will return to where they were previously. So that's how you select your parameters. Let's just reset this, and let's say last 2 years, Irish racing only, Irish chase races, and distance of 3 miles plus. So if I just do 3 miles in the from box and leave it as any in the other one, click generate report, and that just gives me the detail for those parameters. Now let's introduce this right hand side now, this area here. You can see my squiggly pen. Let's have a look at this. Over here we've got a number of other elements. So essentially what we have is on the right hand side we've got what might be called inputs, and on the left hand side we've got what might be called outputs here. And again, excuse my squiggly pen lines. So what are the outputs? Right, well, we as you remember, we just did a quick query to illustrate, and what I've got here is the summary data. So for the query that I just made, there were 1,985 qualifying runners, 181 winners. So there's a strike rate and profit and loss and so on. So these columns are runs, wins, places, win percent, each way percent, win profit and loss, each way profit and loss. Return on investment is ROI. AE is actual over expected, which again I referenced in the first article, and there's a link in that article to discover more about that. IV, the link to AE also explains IV, which is impact value. If you haven't looked at what those things mean, I would recommend you do that. The summary is that a number above 1 is good, a number below 1 is less good, and the further away from 1 in either direction, the better or worse something is. Now, let's look at these buttons along the top here. Just here, my best drawing there. So the tab that is highlighted is the summary tab, and you can see that we have this summary data here for the query that we just ran. Next to it is the qualifiers tab. Now if I click on that one, we'll get the first 20. This is sorted by date, the most recent 20 qualifiers on this particular query, and I can go and look at all of the data here. The next one is a chart image, which won't make a lot of sense here because we haven't broken the data down. We've just got a singular all block in our bar, and you can see when I hover over that bar, it displays the summary data, 1985 181 520, which is the same as this, 1985 181 520. So that's chart. We'll come back to that in a second. Now I can't even remember from a minute ago what the which filters I selected, which parameters I selected on the left hand side. So luckily we have this filters tab, and if I click that, it reminds me. So I've got a date range, which is the last 2 years. Country is Ireland, race code is Chase, distance is from 3 miles. There's no 2 here because I didn't put a 2 in, but if I just make that 4.5, generate the report again, we've got the 2 there, and then the summary data of course is the same because there are no races longer than 4.5 miles. So that's that. Now this is the angles tab. I'll just touch on it there, but I'm going to ignore it for now and come back to it later. So as well as these tabs, all of which have information related to the query, in other words different displays of the output, we've also got at the top here some ways to filter the content here. Now again, this will make more sense in a second when I order by something, and we've got a clear and update and some other links here which I'll talk about in a second. The first thing we need to do is order by something meaningful. So why don't we order by sire? So what I'm then saying is, from these 1,985 runs, let's have a look at which sires do best in staying chases in Ireland. Now this might take a minute. I'll just click the generate report button. And here's the data. Again, you can see at the bottom, hopefully, that we've got this summary line, which we're familiar with. But we've now got a breakdown by sire in alphabetical order currently of all the different sires who have had runners between 3 miles and 4.5 miles in the last 2 years in Irish chases. Great, okay, great, but not really very meaningful at this stage. So what we can do is we can sort by any of the column headers. So let's sort by actual over expected, which is one that I tend to use quite a lot. If I click it twice, if I click it once, it sorts low to high. Click it again, high to low. So this is interesting, but we've got a lot of sires here with kind of almost no data, and it's not really a very meaningful data set. So what I want to do is I want I want to eliminate some of those very small sample sizes here. So I'm going to use my parameters at the top here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say at least 20 runs, let's say 15 runs here. And if I click update, what that's going to do is it's going to hide all of these, essentially all of these in view, because they're all less than 15 runs. Now, it's not going to do it in a very pretty way. It's not going to be nice alternate row shading because it's simply hiding the rows. But if I click update, you can see that those have disappeared. So we've now only got, and if I sort by runs now, you can see we've only got those sires with more than 15 runners against these filters. So we can go down. We can see Milan is the major player in this group. Again, I'm going to sort by actual over expected, and I want to really home in. So I'm going to change my AE to be at least 1. Click update again. Now I've got a very small subset of sires in this particular query that I've done. There isn't really anything meaningful here, and that's fine because I'm just trying to show you how the buttons work. When we get into the examples in part 3, there'll be a lot more of interest. Let's go back to our qualifiers tab, and in the qualifiers we've still got all of the runners, so it's not filtered by these parameters at the top here. If we only wanted to filter, but if we only wanted to see the qualifiers for these particular sires, then what you'll notice to the left of each runner is a little plus. And if we click these pluses, they turn into minuses, as you can see. And so I've selected them all, and if I then click generate report, I've now got a report. You can see at this summary line at the bottom, I've only got these sires and their constituent data. So if I look at the qualifiers now, we only have those that relate directly to these sires that we've selected. And if I go over to the sire box on the left hand side from our inputs, where I've added these, where I click the plus to turn it into a minus, you'll see that those appear in this list here. Now I can deselect them from either the left hand box or from here, and you can see as I click, for instance, when I click Mountain High, you'll see the checkbox on the left hand side here disappear. There we go, and likewise we do by destination. And when I add them back in, that's what happens. So that's that, and then the qualifiers list, as I say, has truncated accordingly to accommodate only those selected sires. Now let's have a quick look at the chart button. We can see that the chart view now displays our list of stallions, and there are some boxes at the top here. So we've got a bar. We can choose the display to be bar or line, so you can have a line graph, and there's the 0 line on there, or pie. Now pie isn't available for all options, but in this case bar and line. You can select the values by runs, wins, places, essentially all of the column headers. So what about ROI? And we can see that. And then we can order by, in other words, the entities, in this case these stallions, can be ordered by any number of things. So let's order them by group, and then that will put them in alphabetical order, as you can see, B, D, D, K, M, N, V. Or we can order by win, profit and loss, and then we get this scale from good to less good, and so on. So you can play around with that. There are any number of things that you can do with that to bring your data to life. Again, we've got the filters tab here. Now let's quickly introduce the angles tab. Now a lot of what happens in Query Tool happens within the Angles tab. This is a place where we can save data and have that data recalled to us only when it's relevant. So let's just say we wanted to save this. I mean, it's not really a very meaningful angle, but let's do it anyway. Let's say Irish 3 mile plus chase sires. We call it that. And you click the Add Angle button, and then you can see in the drop down below I've now got an Irish 3 mile plus chase sires angle, and that finds its place in my long list of angles. Unfortunately, if you're watching this just after I've recorded it, you may be aware that as a result of the coronavirus issue, which is obviously a very major issue right now as I'm recording, there isn't any racing, and so all of these angles have a 0 in the box against them. In other words, there are no qualifiers. But in happier times, when there is racing, there will be a number related to the number of qualifiers or potential qualifiers in the next 5 days entries. So those are those. And then if let's say this number was 10 and I clicked the View Runners button, in this area here I would see the runners for today, tomorrow and the next few days. If I wanted to remove an angle, and I do have rather a lot in here, so I might just remove this one, I think. I'd click the Remove Angles. Before I do that, I'm just going to update the settings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, actually, I want those sires from 2 miles 6 to 4 miles 4. So I've just changed the distance there arbitrarily, and I'll click the Generate Report button, and then I'm going to change the title, and then I'm going to I'm not sure if that's going to update these settings. It says updating angle. Are you sure? Okay. So it's updated the angle but hasn't changed the title. So if I reset this now, and everything's gone back to everything has gone back to 0, and we then go back to our Angles tab and select, do I call it Irish 3 mile chase sires, and click Generate Report, and then if I go down to my parameters, distance, you can see it's got that changed distance. Okay, so that's that. I'm going to delete that now. So I'm going to click Remove Angle, and it's there's a message at the top which you may not be able to see. It might be just above the recording, but it says deleting. Are you sure? Which is good, because sometimes you're like, oh bother. No, actually I didn't mean to do that. In this case I am sure, so I'm going to click the OK button. If I wasn't, I'd click the Cancel button. OK, and then we can see that that Irish one has gone from my list. And that's how we save an angle, recall it, update it, and remove it. Now, again, one of the things I want to show you is how this angle data is recalled for you, such that the next time there is a qualifier on a given angle, you are aware of it. As I say, unfortunately, there's no racing at the moment, so I can't evidence these in real time. However, in the user manual, on about page 106, is some information about something called the QT Angles Report. And this report can be found from the Reports the reports drop down. Right at the bottom, QT angles. And as you'll know, at the moment there is no racing, so there are no angle qualifiers, unfortunately. But when there is racing, the report looks like this. And all of the column headings are sortable, so you can quickly see what you've got and against which report. Clicking on any of these will take you to the race, and you can go and check those out. Now, as well as that, within a race card, and again, I'm afraid I can't evidence this for you, but what I can do is show you where they exist. Let's go to, doesn't really matter, any old race will do. Within the race card, you'll see that there is a column of blue zeros in this case, and these are, if you hover over it, query tool angles. So when you're looking at a card, you will see where these zeros are if there is a qualifying angle on any of your QT angles. So if you've got 5 saved, which are kind of low numbers of qualifiers, it will be occasional that you see a number other than 0 in these boxes. But if you are regular, if you've got plenty of angles saved, and some of them are quite high volume in terms of number of qualifiers, you'll see quite a few numbers in here. And you can click on an individual one. Again, nothing's going to happen here because there's no data, but if you click on this number, let's say it had 2, it said 2 in the box rather than 0, that would mean you've got 2 query tool angles associated with this runner. Clicking on that will open up the angles, and if you wanted to look at all of the angles associated with all of the runners in the race, you could click this blue question mark in the header bar. So clicking that would open up all of these where the number is not a 0, in other words where there are QT angle qualifiers. And that's a really helpful way of, rather than just backing blind every single qualifier, it's a really helpful way of just bringing in some additional information that's meaningful to you in the context of a race that you're looking at right now. Now, before I finish this second part, I just want to refer back to the query tool, and I want to talk about a really important limitation in terms of what it can do when it's providing qualifiers for QT angles. Now, if I select, let's go to this yeah, it's fine. Let's go to this one, right, generate report. Now, you'll see here that this angle is called all-weather handicap jockeys 10-to-1 max. That means I put a maximum odds cap of 10-to-1. But if you look at the filters associated with this QT angle, I've got jockeys, I've got a maximum odds, UK, flat all-weather, handicaps, and some dates. Now, in actual fact, this is good because I've realised that I've made the mistake that I want to warn you about. So one of the limitations of Query Tool is that Query Tool is a historical database. That means it's looking backwards, so we can research racing history. What it can't do is look forwards. So in this case, I've got an odds parameter, a maximum of 10-to-1, and that is absolutely fine for doing the research, absolutely fine. But it's not fine for generating qualifiers because the angle system that we use cannot know what price a horse is going to be. And even if, let's say, a horse is forecast 9-to-1 or a horse's best early price is 9-to-1, that doesn't mean that it's going to finish 9-to-1. It might go off 11-to-1, in which case it wouldn't qualify with a ceiling of 10-to-1. So rather than confuse people, we simply ignore odds. So this system, as I've saved it, this angle as I've saved it, will never display any qualifiers because of this bit here. So what I need to do is go to the runner, the runner variable, and I need to go down to odds, and I need to change this to any to any, change it back to any, and essentially get rid of this variable here, and click generate report. And now it's not going to be so meaningful in terms of the summary data, but once I save this, updating angle, are you sure? Yes. The next time there is a qualifier, it will appear in my report, and it will appear on the race cards and so on. This is really important, and it's something that is well noted in the user guide, but I just want to really probably overstate this, because if you have done with your angles what I had done and left in an odds parameter, your angle is never going to display any potential qualifiers. So what I've done, and what I suggest you do, is add into the angle title any odds criteria, right? So here I've put 10 to 1 max. So I know when I see a qualifier against this particular QT angle, I know that if the horse is 20 to 1, it's a chuck out. If the horse is 6 to 1, then it's an interesting piece of information for me to be aware of. Okay, so that's really important. When you do your research, by all means use the odds parameters. But once you've found your angle and you want to have a ceiling or a floor, whatever, don't forget to remove the odds element from your filters, and then save the angle with the odds element removed and a comment in the title to indicate what the odds maximum or minimum or range is. Okay, I think I've laboured that enough. Now, while I'm labouring that, I need to say that there are odds is not the only parameter where that would be true. Essentially, anything that we can't know is something that shouldn't be saved as a filter. So obviously we can note the horse, sire, downsire, trainer, jockey. All of these things don't change. Odds changes, odds rank changes, and pace score is the other one that changes. So those are the three to be really careful with: pace score, odds, and odds rank. And on the race, we've got some stuff around SP favourite, second favourite, and third favourite. These things can't be known until a race is off, essentially. So those are the things that, by all means, research with them. But once you save your angle, put something meaningful in the title and remove those parameters, those variables from your saved filters. Okay, I hope that makes sense. That was a bit waffly in the end. That was a quick overview of Query Tool, what it is, where it lives, how it works. And in the final part, we'll get a bit more down and dirty with examples. And from those examples, you'll have some angles that you can take away and replicate in your own version of Query Tool, so you'll be able to practice against those. What's important with those angles is I've tried to use examples where it's one element of an area that you could research for days and weeks if you had the wit and the wherewithal to do that. So in other words, I'm going to give you one example of something, and you can go away and research as many other ones as you like and save them to your QT angles. We've probably all got a bit more time just now, well, as I'm recording this, amidst the coronavirus hiatus. So why not put it to good use by coming up with some great angles that are not known to the general public and that will really give you a head start when we get back racing again. Okay, that's all for part 2 of this 3-parter. I hope there was some good value in there. I hope you better understand how to use the query tool, what it's good for, what its limitations are, and I can't wait to share some really interesting examples in part 3. For now, this is Matt Bisogno saying thank you very much for watching. Apparently that's easy for me to say, and bye for now.